Welcome to this presentation of the Rotary Club of North Bethesda, Maryland, USA. Our club was established in 1974. We meet every Friday morning at 7:45 a.m., and we often invite guest speakers to give presentations on all kinds of interesting subjects. Please contact us through our website at nbrotary.org. And thanks for watching. Our speaker today is Ambaree Majumder, coming to us from Singapore. She will be introduced by North Bethesda Rotary Club member Linda Bergcross.
I'm very happy to introduce Ambaree, who is a second-generation Rotarian, and her father was past president in Malaysia of Rotary. Although she has an IT background and was a business analyst, she has become a social entrepreneur using plant-based nutrition. She's spoken at many Rotaries all around the world, and she is visiting us from Singapore. It's 8 o'clock, 8:45 there or something, you said?
No, it's 9 o'clock, 8:55 p.m.
PM. All right. So we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say. You're on.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linda. I'd like to share my screen, please. Great. So I'd like to first of all apologize for my low voice. I'm down with COVID. Everybody in my house has got COVID right now. We are recovering, but we are still in the middle of, if anybody has had it, then they'll know that the peak is when it really gets a little bit difficult. I have 2 little children and it's a little bit difficult. But then if you cannot hear me at any point of time, just stop me and I'll repeat myself. So thank you so much for my introduction, Linda. My name is Ambaree, and I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Marina City in Singapore. And I'd like to thank you again for this opportunity to speak with you, to speak to your wonderful club. Today, I want to talk about our oceans, as the name of my talk suggests. And I am also certified in plant-based nutrition as well as food sustainability from Cornell University, the online version of Cornell University. So my talks are based on my education in those courses, and I have been giving talks in many clubs, of course, but also on different international platforms where sustainability is a point of focus. As the name of my talk suggests, I will touch upon how our current dietary habits and patterns might be a key contributor to what is happening to our oceans. Now, I have constantly felt that the kind of attention that our oceans need has always been underplayed to some extent in comparison to other climate crisis, other areas of climate crisis. Although beach cleanups are happening at many places, which is a great thing to do, but what we might want to ask ourselves as environmentally conscious that all of us are, is that we are cleaning up beaches to save marine life, then is there anything else that we might be doing which could be contributing to large-scale marine decimation? In my talk today, I want to break down why our oceans, which is one of the vastest, oldest, self-standing natural systems of our planet, suddenly needs our help. Before I bring up facts and statistics, I want to take a minute to explain why environmental sustainability, or the chances of survival of life itself on the planet, is a direct and an immediate consequence of what happens to our oceans and marine ecosystems in the future. To start with, I want to mention the not so obvious but indispensable services that oceans provide for us. Because
they don't see us.
Okay, because it is often presumed that the most prominent job of oceans is to provide us with seafood, which is really a self-centered way of thinking and is obviously not true. Number one, between 50 to 80% of atmospheric oxygen that we breathe is actually produced by our oceans. The surface layer of the oceans is teeming with photosynthetic plankton. Although they are invisible to the naked eye, they produce more oxygen than the largest redwoods. One other environment regulatory activity that our oceans bear is that they absorb more than 90% of the excess heat generated by global warming or global heating, because ocean water has a remarkably high heat capacity. But as the oceans become warmer, it is expected that hurricanes and and rainfall will become more and more powerful. So our marine bodies provide key service of climate regulation like energy budgeting, carbon sequestering, and carbon and nutrient cycling. What I'm trying to highlight here is that our oceans and the ecosystems that they support are way more important for our survival than just be a source of seafood. Now let's take a look at how this very complex and robust systems that function within the oceans are being disrupted by human interferences. So plastic, mercury pollution, marine ecosystem destruction, etc., are grave issues that are causing threats of immense scale to our oceans. But the biggest and most common threat that all of these anthropogenic activities are causing is that all of them are either on purpose or collaterally damaging our vastest ecosystem by killing marine life, marine plants and animals. So when their lives are endangered, it is then that we see that our oceans are in danger. Now we know that we cannot survive without functioning oceans, and our oceans are in danger. And we want to save them, of course, because ultimately we want to save ourselves. Let's see what we want to achieve when we step out to save the oceans and solve these problems. So no matter what activity we might be involved in, whether it is to reduce our dependence on plastic or reducing waste, lessening our consumption of harmful chemicals or anything else, when we say that we want to save the oceans, it essentially means that we want to save the inhabitants of the oceans. So basically, in order for us to have thriving oceans, we need to make sure that all the species of living beings in the oceans are safe, that the population of each of these species is not higher or lower than what is needed for everyone's natural life cycles to function optimally. Now, let's take a look at that industry, which has the most widespread human activity at the oceans and is directly participating in decimating marine life. You probably can guess that I'm going to be talking about fishing. Now, humans ate fish and other aquatic animals since prehistoric days, and we have much archaeological evidence about that. In fact, one of the reasons why ancient humans would settle near water sources would be because they would be assured of food around those areas. When fishing primarily happened that way, meaning the traditional way, it really never put our oceans in danger, because those would literally be a drop in the ocean, meaning oceans have always been too vast a resource for such small-scale fishing methods to create a dent in them. That way of fishing did not cause issues like overfishing, bycatches, and ghost nets, which are prevalent in the way fish is caught today. They rather gave a livelihood to those who probably were traditional fishermen for generations. So what has changed now suddenly? The practice that has complicated the entire process and dynamics today is the modern day industrialized fishing, which functions on a scale that is completely unsustainable even by the vastest ecosystem that we have on our planet, which is our oceans. This way of fishing is referred to as commercial fishing, which is a multinational, multi-billion dollar industry that has been depleting fish population and other marine life and the overall marine environment for decades, driving many species towards extinction. So how do we really define commercial fishing? As the name suggests, simply, it just means fishing for making commercial profit. When it comes to doing business solely for profit, other elements like competition, cost, targets, productivity, profitability come into the picture. And the well-being of the oceans takes a comfortable backseat or is totally ignored, like it never mattered. Like every business that wants to make economic profit, the commercial fishing industry also focuses mainly on maximizing profitability and minimizing cost, which is perfectly all right. But the methods and practices that are employed by the commercial fishing industry cause our oceans to pay a heavy price because they relentlessly try to meet the unsustainable and forever skyrocketing global demand for seafood. In the course of keeping up with supply for this kind of a demand, the colossal rate and scale at which fishing is done using factory ships as big as football fields is causing an underwater havoc and bringing us close to a marine catastrophe. Or in other words, a complete climate breakdown, because catastrophe in the oceans actually means a climate breakdown for us. Today, more than half the seafood that we consume is wild caught or is a product of commercial fishing. So here's a video that shows I think it's less than 2 minutes. That shows two of the most popular commercial fishing methods. Number one is bottom trawling, and the other one is long line fishing. Let's just take a look at how they are employed and the kind of impact they have on the oceans.
When it comes to wild fish, the two main methods of catching fish are bottom trawling and longline fishing. Bottom trawling is a method of fishing that involves dragging heavy weighted nets across the sea floor in an effort to catch fish. It is a popular method in commercial fishing because it can catch large quantities of fish in one go. However, when dragging the large weighted nets across the seafloor, everything that happens to be in the way gets swept up in the nets too, leading to huge amounts of bycatch and also the damaging of the sea floor, which creates harmful algae blooms and oxygen deficient dead zones. Longline fishing is where fishing vessels trail huge lines of nets through the oceans, with hundreds or even thousands of baited hooks attached along the nets. These nets can be as long as 50 to 100 kilometers. Similar to bottom trawling, the lines are indiscriminate, meaning that bycatch is also a huge issue. With every year around 650,000 whales, dolphins, seals, sea lions and turtles being killed because of the fishing industry, which equals more than 1 every minute. And some estimates said it could be as many as double this number. On top of that, it is estimated that 50 million sharks are unintentionally caught as bycatch each year, which is about half as many as are killed intentionally for their meat and fins. Yet, why is it then that we look in horror at those who eat shark fin soup, when our consumption of fish is also responsible for the mass killing of tens of millions of sharks every single year?
So just to give a little more depth to commercial fishing, bottom trawling and almost all other commercial fishing methods have several severe primary, secondary and tertiary environmental repercussions, as you can see here. The United Nations estimates that up to 95% of global ocean damage is a direct result of bottom trawling. When a thriving underwater ecosystem is bottom trawled, the ocean floor is left with absolutely nothing but copious signs of violation and damage. The indiscriminate mopping off of the ocean floors by factory-sized trawlers with immensely heavy-weighted nets causes many non-target animals to get caught, in addition to the incredibly high number of fish that get swept off, leading to many of them, like turtles and sharks, stingrays, dolphins, who have important and indispensable ecological roles to play to be at a threat of extinction. And this problem of bycatches and thus contributing to marine wildlife plummeting is true for almost all commercial fishing methods. Continuing with the problem of bycatches, according to an article by Worldwide Fund for this magazine called Nature, in total, 38 million tons of sea creatures are unintentionally caught everywhere, unintentionally. 38 million tons, not 38 million individuals, but 38 million tons of sea creatures. That is 40% of fish catch worldwide. So 40% is just treated as discard. A large amount of this is either thrown back into the sea as rubbish, dead, dying, or seriously injured or disposed of on land. For some species, it is even more. For example, for 1 kg of shrimp, 5 to 20 kgs of bycatch can be found in the nets. So shrimp trawlers discard 60 to 80% of their catch, making their business an extremely environmentally destructive practice. What alarms next is the carbon emissions caused by a previously overlooked source, which is again bottom trawling. Bottom trawling is practiced extensively by dozens of countries around the world, including the United States, China, and the EU. According to groundbreaking calculations done by 26 authors from around the world, it is reported that bottom trawling is responsible for 1 gigaton of carbon emissions every year. So just bottom trawling produces 1 gigaton of carbon every year, a higher annual total than pre-pandemic aviation emissions. Carbon of this huge quantity is released from the seabed sediment into the waters that aggravate processes like ocean acidification, as well as adversely affects productivity and biodiversity, that same study said. It is because marine sediments are the largest pool of carbon storage in the world. The third point that needs our attention is the compelling issue of abandoned fishing nets and gears called ghost nets that float across oceans. So what happens is that thousands of kilometers of fishing nets are abandoned or lost in the ocean waters every year by the fishing industry. Again, protected animals like dolphins and turtles, sea lions get entangled and injured by these nets and hooks, and they eventually either die of asphyxiation or starvation. A report by the World Animal Protection called Ghosts Beneath the Waves described the catastrophic impact of ghost gears on our oceans and mentions that 45% of all the threatened marine animals, have been either killed or harmed by abandoned fishing gear. That the third photo is the photo of a sea turtle who was found in this state, struggling to set itself free from fishing nets by an underwater photographer in 2019, somewhere around Barcelona. So therefore, picking up plastic bags or plastic materials from the beaches that are visible to us is a good effort to save marine biodiversity, but it might be a myopic approach to solving the overall ocean plastic problem if we fail to address what is happening in the marine, what is happening to the marine animals in the pelagic or open sea areas because of thousands of miles of plastic fishing nets abandoned and lost by the commercial fishing trawlers. Now, let's take a look at a proposed solution to all these threats that commercial fishing poses on the oceans and see how effective really they are. Although in theory, farmed seafood or seafood and fish or aqua farming are often championed as the sustainable solution to the problem of overfishing and overexploitation of the oceans. But the truth is that intensive fish farming has many negative consequences for the environment and coastal communities, which are never shared with us. Firstly, the way fish is farmed and housed is not hygienic, and it causes excessive overcrowding in the fish pens. Because of this overcrowding, Fish often injure themselves, get sick, and fall victim to parasites more easily than they would in the open seas. To counter these effects, what fish farmers do is they rely on antibiotics and pesticides, which contaminate the water. Wastewater is overloaded with food residue, antibiotics, and excrement, creating oxygen depleted zones or dead zones due to algae blooms in the natural environment around the farm sites. Secondly, due to large releases of nitrogen, phosphorus, and fecal matter into the waters, this kind of intensive farming has been seen to damage the coastal environment by causing eutrophication and acidification of water. Globally, up until 1970s and 80s, it was not very obvious that dissolved oxygen would become critical in brackish or shallow coastal systems. It was much later when large areas of low dissolved oxygen started to appear with associated mass mortalities of invertebrates and fishes. Sometime in the year 2009 or 10, I was in an island in Malaysia, and we were thinking that the following morning we would be going for a snorkeling. And once we woke up, we were just shocked to see that the beach we were in, it was completely, I mean, there was we didn't see the beach anymore. There were just dead bodies of these fish who were just floating. So I've seen this myself in person. Thirdly, coastal ecosystems are often completely destroyed in order to make space for intensive aquaculture. This is the case with the artificial ponds created to farm tropical shrimp. Mangroves, we know how important mangroves are, and mangroves are chopped down, leading to the disappearance of all the species that take shelter in the trees, like oysters and birds and more. This also implicates the removal of a strong and natural barrier against tsunamis and other storms. So when the environmentally conscious consumer were unhappy with the severe environmental implications caused by the commercial fishing industry and aquaculture industry, about which I just spoke, a new solution was brought in to encourage consumers to continue buying seafood labeled as sustainable seafood. If you delve a little bit into sustainable seafood, you will know the truth. So what is sustainable seafood? Seafood that comes in packaging claiming its content as certified sustainable is sustainable seafood. It means that the fish were declared as sustainably caught by either an organization, a private company, it can be a government agency, it can be anybody. Basically, sustainable seafood means that the fishery claims to be making efforts to kill fish in a manner and rate that did not cause overfishing, that helped rebuild depleted stocks. But all of these claims have no proof. They just claim that they have done it and we just have to believe it. But requirements to get a sustainable seafood certification from the varying entities differ. Popular sustainable seafood labels have different standards for fisheries to qualify to use its label on packaging, which can be very confusing to the consumer. You can check out their websites for more information. Whatever the measures may be, it is important to remember, like I mentioned earlier, like any other industry, the fishing industry exists primarily for economic reasons and not to protect the future of the oceans. If protecting the oceans was a top priority for these companies, then they would do more than simply alter their fishing practices to be just a little bit more sustainable. Their will to protect the oceans would be clearly visible to consumers in their actions, where they would stop using these commercial fishing methods entirely. So the question to ponder over is whether we as consumers are being merely lured to pay more to buy sustainable seafood only as a feel-good factor with no real and convincing environmental accountability. Is this yet another greenwashing technique to keep the truth hidden from us and for business to run as usual? So in this kind of a situation, so in conclusion from about the oceans, I'd like to simply simplify my presentation a little bit and bring the salient points before that I just spoke about. Firstly, we need to understand the obvious. That is, to save the planet, we need to save our oceans. Captain Paul Watson, who is a marine conservationist, once said, if the oceans die, we all die. It's as simple as that. It's an equation. So the oceans and their inhabitants are among our greatest allies, our best friends in our fight against climate change. Therefore, let us come together to protect the oceans and not exhaust it like a bottomless resource of unbelievable amounts of seafood and fish being pulled out at ridiculous rates and scales. Second, we need to understand that saving our oceans essentially means taking action to restore the marine biodiversity to ensure least disruption in the way marine plants and animals function in tandem with one another. Third, the first step towards solving any problem is to identify it and acknowledge the problem. Undoubtedly, industrialized human activity that is most widespread in open and coastal seas is commercial fishing. Attempting to save the oceans without addressing the threats that commercial fishing and aqua farming pose on them is like ignoring the elephant in the room, because it is this industry that is inflicting damage of unbelievable scales to our oceans. After having identified this problem, one of the most powerful and effective solutions that we can be a part of would be to consciously be aware of how much seafood we are consuming. Because the price of our seafood is not just the money that we pay across the counter to buy it. There is a huge hidden environmental price that is being paid by our oceans for our food choices. As of now, none of the solutions that are being offered to us by the fishing industry are sustainably foolproof, none of them. There are many gray areas that need much testing and implementation before coming up with convincing results. Therefore, to make a conscious decision to collectively reduce our consumption of fish and seafood to any extent, to the extent that we are comfortable with, is something that can actually hit the nail on the head in the long run. Coincidentally, because of the malpractices happening in the waters, fish and seafood are increasingly becoming less safe for human consumption as well. Today, marine animals are living and breeding in toxic and unnatural environments, loaded with plastic, mercury, heavy metals like mercury, and chemicals, which when we consume become a part of our physical systems, and with overexposure to them, they are major risks of like various health implications that we could face, like Vibrio and foodborne infections as well as sepsis. So I'm at the end of my presentation today, but in this kind of a situation, I just like to end it by saying that the most powerful and effective way to help our oceans or even climate change is to watch what we are eating. Am I asking everybody to become vegan? No. Am I asking everybody to become a vegetarian? No. But I'm just asking everybody to be aware of how much, because in affluent societies in which we live, we can buy any food that we want to buy. We feel like eating something, we can buy it. But what we don't know often, which is hidden from us, is the price that our oceans, that our wildlife, that our planet is paying for our choices. So whatever you might be, wherever you might be right now in terms of your dietary practice and your dietary choices, if you can reduce the consumption of fish and seafood to half, let's say you are a fish eater every day, like 7 days a week, if you can reduce it to 4 days a week, even that, or even less than that, or even more than that, it really depends on you, then it can bring a massive change to the way the oceans look right now. You might be aware of the many ways intensive large-scale animal agriculture in general is impacting climate change. I also give talks about them. So here are some of the strategies, very easy baby steps that anybody can take, which are actually the most powerful steps that anybody can take to save our planet Earth. Now, because these don't need expertise, these don't need technology, these don't need money. These just need us to be aware to make choices consciously. We can go meatless 1 day a week or multiple days in a week. It really depends on you, how many times you want to do it. When I say meatless, I also mean fishless or seafoodless. Make just one meal a day 100% plant-based. That could be an easy option for some. you can swap out cow's milk for a non-dairy milk like soy or oat, or simply eat a plant-rich or plant-based meal whenever it's possible for you. Another very interesting way would be to eat a plant-rich meal at your club or district meetings. I know you're meeting on Zoom right now, but when club meetings resume, because this will not only help you reduce your carbon footprint, but it might also inspire members around you to get educated about the hidden environmental cost of their daily meals, their daily diets. And with that, I think I've taken more time than I was given. Or have I not? I don't know. I didn't check the time when I started. I'm at the end of my conversation, talk, but we can continue the conversation with your questions.
Ambaree, you're just on time. You're doing great. So
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
We have
Thank
about
you so much.
5 minutes for questions. So folks, go ahead.
Ambaree, I have a question. This is very depressing to me because I love fish.
I'm sorry.
I eat a lot of fish. Is there any type of fish that is okay to eat that, you know, due to the certain waters that it's in or how it's caught? Or is this just fish in general?
I think more than like I don't know the exact percentage. I mean, I have an idea, but I don't want to say it because I don't know. I'm not sure about it. But most of the fish that is available in our supermarkets are caught by commercial fishing, about which I just either they're commercially fished or they're aqua farmed, or they're labeled sustainable fishing. I mean, sustainably caught. They don't, which is a complete greenwashing. So if you really, probably I would say this I'm going to say just out of what I've read, but might not be scientific. But if you're really craving for fish, you can eat it. You can eat the commercially fished fish, but just that the frequency at which you are eating, the quantity. See, that's what I was saying. Like in earlier times, when population was much less, when there was no commercial fishing and there's no automation, people used to fish one fish at a time. I mean, very less number of fish at a time. So there was really, the ocean had the time to replenish. But now the rate and the scale and the quantity at which it is happening is completely unsustainable. So if you really want to eat it, probably you can eat sweetwater fish. They have something called the river fish, which are, you know, or if you want to eat it, if you really want to eat it, then just go eat it. But I mean, if you can't live without eating fish, then just eat it. But then don't eat it the day you are okay to not eat it. You know what I'm saying? The day you are okay without eating it and you want to eat something else, probably just eat some tofu or have some beans and grains and vegetables and salads and feel good about it. Just do that. And that, I think, is a great strategy.
Because to me, the reason there is fishing is because the population in the world is so big that we have to feed so many more people than we used to.
Although the fact of the matter is that we have enough resources to feed everybody. Nobody needs to go hungry. We have enough resources. We grow enough grains to not just feed the 8 billion people, but also the upcoming 10 billion people. But what we do is that maximum resources are spent in animal agriculture, which is an inefficient way of food processing. So we input a lot of resources and get only this much as our output, which kind of keeps our affluent societies overfed, whereas there are many societies around the world who are underfed and malnourished. I see Bruce has raised his finger. Hi, Bruce.
Okay. Hi. I want to agree with everything you've just said, and actually, not to depress things further, but one of the consequences of global warming is the reentrainment, the release of toxic chemicals in ice and snow stores back into the oceans. Okay, so even if we stopped everything that we are doing right now, There are still tons of metals. Mercury is one, but DDT, DDE, these have been deposited over the last 80 years or so since World War II.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's coming back. Now that means a couple of things. There are some of these things are what are called obesogens. These are chemicals that interfere with normal metabolism of fat. I'll put it that way. So that means that one of the obesity epidemic, if we could agree that there is such a thing going on in most of the developed world, some of this is more than just people being couch potatoes. That in fact, there are these chemicals that are interfering with the normal ability to metabolize fat and carbohydrates. So I think that's one. The other part of it, though, is the business of the bycatch. And the CAFOs. We here in Maryland, we're in Maryland. We have this problem on the eastern shore of Maryland with concentrated animal feeding operations, CAFOs. So it's more than just fish farming. They're raising chickens and they're raising cows and pigs. Are going into the coastal environment, which is where most of the fish are actually. So I think there needs to be a concentrated effort to get going on this, because every point you made about the fact that our house is on fire, in effect, is true. Okay, and in supply chain distributions and other things like that, we all know that. But the problem is that's a mechanical issue, as I see it. It's about distribution of food. But the idea that how do we raise enough food to sustain in a sustainable way to feed the planet, not only now, but 20 years from now, our children's children. That needs to be carried on. Want me to stop, Bob? Okay, anyway, I'll stop there.
No. I'm sorry. I was getting an echo. I don't know whether everybody else got it. There was a sound issue. I couldn't. That's why I said yes, because I couldn't hear.
All right.
These are all really good points, and I just want to thank you so much, Ambaree, for being here this morning. I have to officially end the meeting. Of course, if discussion wants to continue, I would invite it. I think these are important issues, but I just want to say thanks to everybody for being here.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, we are going back to in-person meetings on March 4th for the first and third Wednesdays. So please, everybody, remember that. Next week will be
Friday, not Wednesday.
Did I say Wednesday? Yeah, I'm sorry. We want to make sure that everybody is aware of that. And first and third Fridays. And we will see you next week. So go forth and be good Rotarians. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye. Can I ask you a question, Ambaree?
Sure. Please.
What are the international treaties? International treaties that deal with this kind of overfishing?
Okay, so there are few treaties, not just about overfishing, but there are actually many human rights violations that happen in the middle of the sea. But there is no law enforcement in the middle of the sea where there are these ships where they function. So they are like amazing places for them to violate all the laws, to do what they want. There have been slavery cases of people from like Vietnam and like this part of the world, who the workers, they were put in ships. And so this is like, I know this, one of my domestic helpers, her husband was there in the ship for 3 years, and they had no idea where he was. And he was although I don't know how true that this story is, but then there are, because I heard it only from her, but I know. But if you see there, if you Google it, there are like sex slavery happening on the ships. There is human slavery happening there. So in the middle of the sea, when their treaties are supposed to work, but then there is nobody to check. Can you imagine an industrialist, an industry functioning, waiting to earn money in the middle of the sea when there are no checks in practice. Of course, in theory there are, but then nobody is there to check on them. What do you think that they will do? They will pick up as much as they possibly can, and they will not really adhere to any law. If you watch this film called Seaspiracy on Netflix, it's a documentary called Seaspiracy. Sea like SEA and spiracy, like conspiracy is spiracy. Seaspiracy on Netflix. You will understand how that's an undercover investigation. This movie, I mean, I've been giving talks for about two years now, but this movie was released last year. So when I saw this movie, and I was like, oh my God, whatever I had read in theory in my course is actually seen there. So you might want to watch it on Netflix. It's called Seaspiracy, where treaties are violated like they're like joke. They're like a joke in the middle of the sea. So there is nothing.
So there is no enforcement. There is no enforcement.
No, not at all. And there is no way to enforce also. There is no enforcement, and there is no really. It's really not possible for all countries to be, be present in the middle of the sea, pelagic open sea. What is happening there? How do we know? Even in a quiet area in some other country where like if law enforcement is good, also there are so many crimes happening. Imagine a place where there is nobody to watch. So that's the truth, and that's why sustainable seafood labels are a technique of greenwashing, which is not working anymore. Especially with people who like to ask questions. That really is this sustainable? Show me how it is sustainable. And then you read it, and you are within a second you are convinced that this is not sustainable. This is just brainwashing me and keeping me in the dark.
Excellent presentation. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
Ambaree.
I heard you speak in Marathi just now with your wife.
Oh, you speak Marathi?
No, I don't. But I lived in Bombay for a long time.
Acha, okay. Bhalo ache. That's the only Bengali I know.
Yeah, I'm a Bengali. Yeah.
Ambaree, I had a question for you. You
Yes,
mentioned
Paul.
about the mangroves. What was the impact of happening with the mangroves?
So, these fish farms, the ponds in which fish are farmed normally, they are most of the fish that are farmed are actually firstly predator fish. They're predator in nature. So they kind of they are fed smaller fish. So to grow these predator fish, you need smaller fish, because you need to feed it to the predator fish, right? So there are these fish farms where the smaller fish, called the forage fish meal basically, is farmed, and those are farmed in coastal areas. And mangroves are the coastal barriers. That's their function. They're supposed to stop storms from hitting the land. That's their job. And not just that, mangroves are irreplaceable friends of ours. But what happens is, to grow these ponds, often the mangroves are cleared because you need space. So when mangroves are cleared, many other, it's like a ripple effect, one after another, domino effect rather, that mangroves are gone, which makes the soil loose, which means there more floods. When mangroves are cut, there is no the wild species whose homes are mangroves. They can be birds, they can be insects, they can be snakes, who are the natural inhabitants of those mangroves, also lose their homes, which leads to their species loss. That's called a species loss. and yeah, we are just making ourselves more and more vulnerable to climate change. We are actually fueling the fire which is burning our house. And one of the most effective, the silver lining here is it, and I agree with Linda that it is depressing and it is scary and everything, but the good thing about this is that even now, as I speak, as we discuss this even today, the most powerful thing and the most effective thing that anybody, you and I, who are normal citizens of the world, and we really want the future of this world to be better, what we can do is to eat consciously, not just eat. And that's also great for our health. Something that is that you might see this coincidence. Whatever is good for the planet also becomes automatically good for our health. Like, for example, eating organic vegetables is great for us. I forget about the expenses, but it is great for us. But it is great for the planet also. Eating more fruits and vegetables and grains and legumes is great for us. Eating legumes is great for us. And do you know that farming legumes is great for the planet? Because if you farm legumes, you avoid monoculture, you promote insects from coming, you promote nitrogen, soil health.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
the soil health becomes good. So the minute we want to do something good for our planet, the system is such that, I don't know, maybe the cosmic system is such that we automatically are doing good for ourselves. So that's the point that I was trying to mention in the mangrove part.
Well, thank you so much. I think across the 12-hour time zones, and we do understand what you're saying. We appreciate that. I've been working on other projects like solar cooking and things to reduce deforestation. We're working with the Rotary, the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group to improve a lot of environmental issues. So this is one of them that's very important. Thank you. I'm going to have to sign off now, but
thank you, Paul.
thank
Thank
you
you
so
so much.
Thank you.
Have a good week.